Welcome everyone to the captive audience. It's 2 minutes after 6 here on the 28th of April, 2025. We're nearing the 100th day of the Trump administration, uh, which should be Wednesday, I think, 30th. And I am sure glad to be here with you tonight. There is my name tonight is my moniker is not an unauthorized migrant. That was a term used by MSLSD today. They were complaining that President Trump uh, had arranged on the White House lawn behind where the reporters do their stand up in front of the White House from the White House press corps. He put 100 posters of illegal migrant criminals, heinous criminals, rapists, murderers, uh, drug traffickers, human smugglers, and put them up on the lawn. And these are the ones that have been caught and deported. And of course, MSLSD is going nuts because when they do their report, it shows that behind there. Now they're trying to figure out how they can blur the faces, but the only time the news blurs faces is when it involves minors. And these are not minors. In fact, they're major criminals. And so, anyway, that kind of leads off our news tonight. I think there's a lot to cover, particularly on what's happening with the Biden-inflicted migrant crisis. So, a lot has happened in the last week, and a lot is happening right now. I'll kind of start out with something that I saw on Friday. So, there is a report that from the let's see, there's an article in the Oregonian by the Associated Press saying that a U.S. district judge has issued an injunction sought by the city of San Francisco saying that President Trump cannot deny federal funds to sanctuary jurisdictions. This is going to be fought tooth and nail. And of course, uh, we've been down this road before with this battle, but this is where an emergency has been declared. Federal law preempts state law with regard to uh, immigration enforcement, immigration and customs enforcement, as well as trying to capture illegal migrants. And so this is going to be a battle going round and round. It's going to go through the court system. I totally expect this to eventually reach the Supreme Court. And there was a Judge Orrick um, that wrote something, a guy nominated by Obama, and wrote something in 2017, and he tried to strike down the ability of executive orders as well as directives from the Attorney General and other federal agencies impeding the flow of funds to states that attempt to be sanctuary jurisdictions. Of course, we had some great news last week that a judge, who apparently, according to the Democrats, is above the law, in Wisconsin, I believe it was, actively tried to, by shutting down her courtroom and then assisting an illegal migrant criminal who was sought by the feds, assisting his escape from federal law enforcement systems. And the result, she's arrested. Um, I also think there was another judge that was hiding in Tren de Agua, gang member who was wanted by the feds in. Oh, that's my fault. Sorry, folks. I just realized you couldn't hear me. I had my mic shut off. It's not your fault, Carol. Sorry about that. Yes, I am not an unauthorized migrant, and we're just covering some of the early news here for the day that came in from last week. So there's a judge uh, responding to U.S. District Judge William Orrick, um, who has put in an injunction against the Trump administration saying they can't withhold federal funds or um, limit the they can't withhold federal funds from municipalities such as San Francisco and Portland if they act as sanctuary jurisdictions. And I think we're going to find out just how far this goes. And so, yeah, you should be able to hear me now, Lori. I hope so. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, good. And so, and that's, happened within the same week that two judges were arrested. One was assisting the escape of a illegal migrant criminal who was wanted by the feds, who was in her courtroom and trying to take down. She shut down her courtroom and helped that individual escape. And the Democrats are saying that she has immunity and can't be held accountable for that. But if she goes and like shoots the bailiff or takes her car and runs over somebody, she's not immune then. And a law is a law. So she has, I forget what the term is, impeded federal law enforcement. There's a technical term for obstructed federal law enforcement in seeking this guy. And so now she has been arrested. And I think we got to see this one all the way through. Just like this battle with Judge Orrick, an Obama judge, who's really acting like an Obama judge. And so we need to see what happens with this. Anyway, back to the rest of our news. President Trump has actually signed an order targeting sanctuary cities. The order is centered around protecting American communities from criminal aliens. And he signed it today, directing his administration to publish a list of sanctuary cities accused of obstructing federal law enforcement. His order states that obstructing and defying federal immigration enforcement, despite the need for federal government's intervention amid an invasion of the southern border, it'll be considered a lawless insurrection against the supremacy of federal law and the federal government's obligation to defend the territorial sovereignty of the United States. And so the order is directed to the Attorney General Pam Bondi and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to publish this list within 30 days and notify the jurisdictions of their defiance of federal immigration law. So there's a bunch of battles happening on a bunch of fronts. Other provisions have directed the two department heads to take steps in order to stop practices that favor illegal immigrants over Americans, as well as to ensure appropriate eligibility verification is conducted for individuals receiving federal public benefits. So they're going to try to cut off the use of federal money, which is supposed to be illegal, for illegal migrants. So got a lot of irons in the fire. Let me see if I can post this story. And in addition to what I just posted about the president's executive order, it mentioned Kristi Noem, the former governor of, I think, South Dakota. And they've captured a guy who actually, while she was having dinner with her family in Washington, D.C., some guy went and stole her purse. And turns out this guy and his accomplice are both illegal immigrants. I know. It's like, wow. Anyway, apparently it was a bad move for the guy to steal the Department of Homeland Security Secretary's purse because he's been caught, and the other guy will probably be caught and then dealt with appropriately. It's amazing. That's how bad this is. And of course, this is out of the dumb criminal file for sure, but even in DC, no one's safe. let's see. There's been a bunch of fake news stories put out by the Democrats. I've been seeing them because they show up on some of the feeds that I see that are like MSNBC and stuff like that that are embedded in my browser, which I'd love to just make those go away, but maybe it's useful because I can see what's happening. But there's one that's claiming that American citizen children are being deported, and they aren't being deported. They're migrant mothers who were here illegally are the ones being deported. And of course, as you know, uh, they're going after people that might also be involved with criminal activity. The mothers, as it turns out, in this one report, Tom Homan, the Donald Trump's border czar, said that was a nonsensical story because they kept the children with their mothers, and they did say, as did Secretary Rubio, that if there was a father who could be identified, who could instead take responsibility for the children, that they could make sure that those children get with that individual. Of course, that person would have to be here legally as well, and we have no idea if that's the case. But they're not deporting U.S. citizens. They are deporting the mother, who they've kept the children with the mother and at the mother's request. So Secretary Rubio also addressed this, and I think he made a great point. The media has been portraying it as if they pulled up with a van, grabbed a toddler, threw them in the van, and deported them. And that's not at all what happened. The parents made the decision, not the U.S. government. And so, again, more fake news. We're starting to get flooded with these stories. They're claiming, like I said, that those judges that got arrested for sheltering and sheltering illegal migrant criminals and interfering with federal law enforcement have immunity, which is a non-existent concept. There's no such thing as immunity for breaking the law, even if you're a judge, which I think that's interesting how the Democrats constantly say there's a constitutional crisis and President Trump is lawless. And then when someone's lawless for real, they're like, oh, they have immunity. Anyway, in other good news, 800 illegal migrants were arrested in a large-scale ICE operation in Florida, and expect to see these coming to a neighborhood near you, because what's interesting about this is, of course, Florida is a cooperative environment for the Trump administration to get these folks out of these communities and deported. But these are some of the worst of the worst. Those arrested included, for instance, Jose Sanchez Reyes, a convicted murderer from Colombia, Rafael Juarez Cabrera, alleged MS-13 gang member, and alleged 18th Street gang members such as Iran Isaac Morazan Izaguirre. Yes, these are people that have hard and fast records of associations with gangs and past criminal records, and they were just wandering around the state of Florida. By the way, I can see that I unfortunately didn't paste successfully the entire URL. Let me try that. There we go. Much better. And so, we've got quite a challenge here, because I was hearing today that in order to deport all of the people, just the ones that Joe Biden let in, there would have to be somewhere on the order of 29,000 deportations a day. And the Democrats are trying to claim that due process exists, full due process exists for all of them through the U.S. court system, which is complete nonsense. They can get the due process that is provided by the executive branch, as that is what the executive branch, not the United States Article 3 courts, are empowered to do. Anyway, continuing with this news here, the deported El Salvadoran that judge Boasberg has tried to order be returned. Or no, it was that other Democrat judge uh, that the deported El Salvadoran Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he is that the judge has ordered to be returned to the United States, which is complete nonsense. This guy was stopped by police and was arrested at that time, and of course that's how he ended up with his first encounter in front of a judge in 2019, identified as an MS-13 gang member. The owner of the car that he was in when he was stopped was a guy named Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes, who has pleaded guilty to smuggling illegal aliens into the United States in 2020, 2 years before Garcia's deportation. Reyes himself was deported after the guilty plea, and actually himself also returned to the country illegally thanks to Joe Biden's horrific border policies. And so, when you've got a bunch of MS-13 tattoos on, you get caught in a car owned by somebody who has then later been convicted of human smuggling and was an illegal immigrant and was smuggling illegal immigrants into the country. Yeah, you're connected with MS-13, duh. And a judge actually determined that. So I think the Democrats want to think this guy is a hero. I think they should keep saying that, because I don't think the American people are going to agree. Sebastian Gorka, who has a role as a senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council under President Trump, has said that there's disturbing intelligence data about drugs coming over the northern border. And he is hopeful, and I don't know if this has been decided yet or not, but he's hopeful that the new Canadian Prime Minister, which will probably be just another socialist, as usual, takes this seriously, because he said intelligence data in terms of not just non-state actors in smuggling of illicit deadly drugs across the northern border, but also state actors from bad countries who are inserting their operatives into the country across that border has come to his attention, and this is concerning. The Canadian-U.S. border is the largest non-militarized border in the world, as I understand it, but the northern border doesn't have like a wall. It doesn't have all these constraints and protections. And if it's got a country like Canada who isn't taking this seriously and is just simply allowing this to happen across their territory into the U.S., then it's not going to be such a non-militarized border after all, frankly. And this is a real concern. And I think it's time to take action on this. And certainly, you got to hope that the Canadians will take it seriously. Maybe they love drugs. I don't know, but they can keep them up there. And there was some big news that I'm just going to jump over to here for Portland. The DEA, along with other local agencies, just made a huge drug bust in Portland. It was about 4 days ago. And it involves Sinaloa cartel members and Honduran nationals. Yes. And of course, we know that Hondurans and Guatemalans are also the on-the-ground distributors. I can even tell you the street corner where they assemble every day in Portland to circulate out the fentanyl to the local street distributors that go to every homeless encampment in the city and destroy people with fentanyl. Well, it turns out that this was one of the biggest busts they've ever had. And it was a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional cooperative effort. And David Medina, our friend, who also has his podcast, covered this and did a really good job of it. And I have to admit, I haven't seen anything in the news about it. The bust resulted in 46 arrests. $204,000 plus dollars in cash seized, 44 pounds of fentanyl, 2,500 fentanyl pills, 22 pounds of meth, 9 pounds of cocaine, 2 pounds of heroin. And really, I haven't seen or heard anything about this featured in the news. But it's on par if you look at it. Like if you have 800 illegal aliens arrested in Florida and 46 in Oregon, Oregon is, that's almost proportional to the size of Oregon in some respects, because Oregon is a much smaller state. But I think we have more of a severe problem in the end. So let me just post this, and you can go look at this on Instagram. Michigan has done a review of non-citizens on their voter rolls. And as it turns out, they tried to declare that their voter rolls were clean, but their voter roll audit skipped over anyone. See, it says Michigan review of non-citizens on voter rolls, skip those without driver's licenses. So they only went and checked people that had driver's licenses to see if they were non-citizens, and somehow ended up on the voter rolls. Duh. That is not even close to a thorough audit. So now the Michigan Secretary of State, who tried to claim that this was a small problem and only 15 non-citizens had voted in the November election, it should be 0, is now kind of on the hot seat and has been exposed because the state isn't verifying the citizenship of their voters, and their audits are also not catching it. So let's see here. And the House Administration Committee, during an election integrity hearing, the Secretary of State said, we're doing everything we can to ensure non-citizens are not able to vote, and that the only U.S. citizens vote in our election, and it's working. And now this has been exposed. And in the next month, a Chinese foreign national at the University of Michigan turned himself in, saying he registered to vote. So apparently the system is you have to turn yourself in, and that's how they catch you. Great system. So, and there's some other details here that are being explored, but I think Oregon, we have our own problem, and it's time we actually addressed it straight up. Federal workers appear to be waging a resistance against the Trump agenda, and it's being captured in videos, and I guess even in some polling. This is a new report reveal a portion of the federal workforce, whose income, of course, is paid by tax revenue, are openly resisting President Trump's efforts to rein in illegal immigration, reform the the education system, and other agenda items. And the Neapolitan Institute did a survey conducted by Scott Rasmussen, the pollster, and released it last week, found that just 16% of government managers who voted for Kamala Harris last November would follow a legal order from President Trump if they disagreed with it. So that's a legal order from the president who directs the executive branch, and they claim they won't do it. Just 16% would. So, and you can read the entire report called "The Resistance: The First 100 Days." And I think all these people, if they refuse to carry out one of these orders, should be fired and be unable to get their jobs back. And there's numerous examples from the past where they've caught federal workers essentially saying that they were going to do this. So Democrats say it's undemocratic. You know what's undemocratic? A democratically elected president elected to carry out what he promised voters he would do has a legal order directed at unelected bureaucrats, and those bureaucrats refuse to carry out that legal order. That's undemocratic, and in some cases, depending on what the order is, that could be treason. So I think it's time that we crack down on this and took back our federal government from insurrectionists, is what they are. and insurrectionists and I don't know what the noun for treason is. Treasoners, I'm not sure, but if they're committing treason, then it's time to get them the hell out of the government. Send them back to the private sector and see if anybody will hire somebody who refuses a direct order from the CEO of a company. Anyway, U.S. tariff revenues have reached a record $15 billion in April. Now, it's less than they had forecast, but as you know, many of these tariffs are only being phased in gradually, and some have been put on hold while negotiations are taking place. But the daily Treasury statement is showing that it's reached an all-time high, and it's up 105% from a year ago. And so this is a big deal. And I think that if you're collecting tariff revenue, then this is how the government used to fund itself when the country first started, actually. Now, I think it would be great if we could get to an even playing field with zero tariffs on either side with many countries. But suffice it to say, the president's revenue forecasts are going to get better and better here. Meanwhile, the White House is threatening a veto on a Senate bill introduced by Oregon Democratic Senator Ron Wyden this month, which may actually get a vote in the Senate, that would block President Trump's global tariffs. And they think it get a vote on Wednesday. It's not clear whether it has bipartisan support, other than Kentucky Senator, GOP Senator Rand Paul has co-sponsored the legislation. And so if it is passed, President Trump says he'll veto it. So the Senate has already voted to block separate tariffs on Canada earlier this month. And there's 4 Republicans that have supported this. Rand Paul, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Kind of the regulars, the ones who are creating havoc and undermining the president's efforts. But they believe they're doing the right thing. And I think we're going to find out in short order exactly what this means for the country because, the president's going to veto it. Let me see here. I'm going to post that Epoch Times article, and then there's the president's veto. The president has also signed a presidential memo targeting Act Blue foreign donations and fraud allegations. So Act Blue is the fundraising machine that allows Democrats to raise tons of money and then funnel that to races that they're trying to win. And they've been very successful at raising money. But as it turns out, there are some very serious allegations that are being investigated that, and also I believe the House of Representatives is also looking into this, that it is that they've been receiving and coordinating efforts to get contributions from foreign nationals, which is forbidden under federal law. And also straw donations, which is another way to get more donations from somebody, which by donating in the name of someone else. And that the people running Act Blue were aware of this and in fact consciously failed to put a stop to it. So, but many Democrats have benefited handsomely for this, and this might actually jeopardize the Democrats' fundraising system, and it couldn't happen to a more deserving bunch. Let's see here. In some foreign news, the power grid went down in Spain today and in Portugal, and they've said that it'll be back up. There's some folks pointing to a poor grid reliability, lack of resilience. Others saying that it was potentially hackers. I don't believe we've actually heard the whole story, but it did say that there was rare atmospheric phenomena that has caused temperature variations, which cause synchronization failures between electrical systems, leading to successive disturbances across the interconnected European power grid. They have done a lot of weakening power grids in Europe, easily as much or more than here, where they've taken reliable fossil fuel based energy and replaced it with unreliable solar and wind. And so let's see what happens with this. But people are now saying, but this is a warning because this is what California has done with their grid, and they may see some of the same problems. Also, in some news out of Europe, the conclave to elect the new pope will begin on May 7th. It's going to be delayed 2 days to allow the cardinals to kind of get together and get to know each other and maybe have some discussions where they find consensus on a candidate before they're sequestered in the Sistine Chapel. What's interesting about that is I saw a little interview briefly this morning with kind of a Vatican watcher who said, actually, unlike in the past, many of these cardinals don't know each other. They've never met each other. And that's because the little gatherings of cardinals that the Pope can call, Pope Francis really didn't do that. And there were a lot of new ones appointed, but during the 10 years of Pope Francis's reign, he didn't call them together frequently at all. So they just don't know each other. And I guess that's sort of the bottom line right now. There's no other great news other than that everybody's speculating about who it might be. But every time somebody speculates, somebody mentions that the last two popes weren't even considered in like the top five before the conclave. So I guess stay tuned and be prepared to be surprised. In Oregon, here's some news. The state of Oregon has been stamped with a big red F for housing affordability and home building, according to a real estate report card. Oregon was one of only 7 states to earn a failing grade on their new housing report card. Oregon ranks 45th out of 50 states in the District of Columbia when scored for housing affordability and home building. Remember, this is the top priority for the governor. And she was going to build 35,000 homes. She has fallen well short of that. I think maybe less than half in recent years, which means that she's failed at a top priority. And she did it before she could blame President Trump for anything. So it's really on her. There's a broad-based U.S. housing shortage estimated to be about 4 million units, but much of the worst of it is concentrated on the coasts and the South, while the South and the Midwest have generally had more affordable options for first-time home buyers. And everything that Oregon's been doing to encourage home building has led to the state falling into a home building slump last year. And it is extremely unlikely that they'll come anywhere close to alleviating the situation. So notice the states that are listed here that are near the bottom, along with Oregon: Connecticut, California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. What do you notice about that? Every single one of them is a deep blue state. These are people running around saying they need more money and more time to build housing, as they erect barriers to building the housing and simply fail to accomplish any of it. The best state for home building and affordability, according to Realtor.com, was South Carolina, followed by Iowa and Texas. What do you notice about those 3 states? Red states. They got A or A minus ratings. So it may be the number one way to solve housing affordability is to get rid of Democrats that are in charge of it and replace them with Republicans. It correlates highly with solving it. And yeah, what do they do with the money? Well, you might look at all of their friends and buddies who probably turn around and donate to them. Just saying. I can't give you evidence of all that, but I think it's very reasonable. However, in more Portland news here, robot cops and anti-crime lights, according to the Oregon Catalyst, have failed to thwart Portland crime. Rob the police robot and anti-crime decorative tree lighting has failed to stop crime in Portland. Who'd have thunk it? This is after Portland defunded police and cut 100 police officers, and they have yet to recover from what the damage that was done by that. But many local businesses tried to hire the robot security as a way to fight the crime wave. And instead, the police robot that was hired to protect the U.S. Bank ended up just seeing crime persisting. And eventually, the U.S. Bank just abandoned the building that had its name on it, the U.S. Bank building. Multnomah County also installed anti-crime decorative tree lights at the drug-infested county library to ward off drug users. And that didn't work either. They've had other harebrained ideas that they've tried, including other non security methods, such as blaring classical music at light rail stops to ward off crime. Another way to fight crime apparently is to announce 90-day emergencies, which they've done repeatedly. I know that Old Town Chinatown in Portland has been going through a constant series of 90-day emergencies. And the only thing you know about an emergency is that they'll make a big deal about it. They'll talk a lot of talk, and they won't do anything. And so certain areas of the downtown have actually been overrun by drug dealers and crime, especially near bottle redemption centers. So much for the bottle bill. It looks like it's actually turned into the fentanyl funding bill. And so this is what they do, is they kind of hang around those centers, redeem the bottles that they find, and then use it to go out and buy fentanyl as soon as possible. Taxpayers Association twice drove by and took a photo outside of one of these notorious bottle redemption centers that's at the center of the controversy. And the photos proved that the situation is just as bad as it was before the emergency was put into place. So another failed policy by Democrats in Oregon. And this is what we should be hearing about and talking about. Instead, they want to talk about Donald Trump all the time, and even though they've caused all these problems, and now all of their solutions are failing. By the way, a top Portland leftist activist, a rioter, has committed suicide. It's unspecified self-inflicted causes, and it's the trans Portland Antifa extremist, or as Andy Ngo has coined the term, Trans Tifa. Who was one of the ones who was there and celebrated when he was beaten by Antifa. And this person's name is Ralph Stewart Baker, who goes by the alias Ranny Baker or Renilda Badel. Has committed suicide in October 2023. Earlier this month, an Antifa faction called the Satanic Portland Anti-Fascist staged a mock religious ritual in downtown. One of the people leading the ritual, a local transsexual activist and writer, was one of the ones that was there when Andy Ngo was beaten. And so take a look at this, because there's a lot of Antifa activity. It's starting to ramp up, and as regular mainstream activists come unhinged, I think the Illinois governor today was just calling for disruption, and came just short of calling for violent protests. You can expect that the Looney Tunes, the militant arm of the Democrat Party, Antifa, will swing into action and start giving people the beat down. This might explain some of the problems that we're having in Portland with nonprofits. Mercy Corps is selling their Portland headquarters amid federal cuts. Now, they'll want to blame the federal cuts, but they're supposed to be a charitable organization that is uh, providing all kinds of life-saving relief around the world. However, there's not only very dependent, apparently, for several of their programs on federal funding, but they have just taken their downtown headquarters, which they renovated back in 2019. They've listed it for sale for $17.6 million. Sorry, the International Aid Organization has had 41 programs terminated, including 9 labeled life-saving. Well, maybe they'll be able to take this very expensive headquarters money that they obtain and use that. Because I don't know why somebody needs an expensive headquarters in downtown Portland, especially apparently now that most of their employees work virtually and only about 17% of their staff since COVID on average have been present in the headquarters anyway. So this just shows what the effect is of Doge and all of the terminations of all these grants, is that these groups are going to go out and have to make more financial sense out of what they're doing, because they could just be landlords and landowners and accumulate little real estate empires, which has no material benefit to their organization when so many of their employees are not even coming personally into the office. So keep an eye on that, because I think that's actually going to continue to be a story as we see what nonprofits are actually spending their money on. I'm not sure we would even know this if it weren't for the fact that Mercy Corps had to list publicly that they were doing this sale in order to sell the place. Oregon wildfire leaders are saying that wildfire prep can't wait any longer. Now, of course, a lot of this prep has waited for years, such as the entire Biden administration. But U.S. Senator Ron Wyden and State Senator Jeff Golden say they're urging Oregonians to act before it's too late. So we got to move, because a lightning strike could unleash an inferno. What also could be done very quickly is harvesting trees and managing properly our forests. But and even Jeff Golden, the state senator, acknowledged a common frustration he hears from people is, why should individuals clear their yards and federal forests remain overgrown and unmanaged? Or, as I heard recently, 81% of all the fires start in the federal forest to begin with. So as they finger wag, apparently they have nothing to say about the federal forest being properly managed. In fact, many of the groups that work with Democrats are busy suing the Trump administration for trying to do exactly this and get federal forests properly managed and get harvest going. So stay tuned for what happens next. But in addition to blaming climate change, the Democrats are going to try and blame President Trump, and they're going to try to blame you. And really, they should just look at themselves. Let's see. And then the last story here is that there was a huge turnout recently for a hearing about Governor Kotek's proposal to update the critical groundwater area protections, as this Curry Pilot article puts it. And apparently it's not super duper popular with the people who rely on groundwater. And so there was a lot of testimony against it, a lot of opposition to her plan. 80% of Oregonians rely on groundwater for some or all of their drinking water. 1/4 rely on private at-home wells. 90% of rural Oregonians rely on these at-home wells. And Representative Bobby Levy and Representative Gabe Smith, both Republicans, spoke out against the bill at the hearing.
Smith said that allowing state agencies to monitor and test private wells or inspect potentially leaky septic systems would violate his constituents' property rights. Levy said it's an unacceptable overreach of state power and a persecution of rural Oregonians. So what they want to do is sick a bunch of inspectors and a bunch of meters on these groundwater sources, and in a state where there's already a problem with obtaining enough groundwater, but the state wants to control all of it, and now they are starting to hear back from the people that will be affected. My sense is stuff like this will probably still pass, potentially because Democrats don't care what people think. Anyway, I hope that gave you a nice overview of what's happening. There's so many more things I could talk about, but I covered a lot tonight. And I hope you guys get the opportunity to share this with as many people as you can, because they frankly don't know all the stuff's going on. And this is a nice, quick way to listen and kind of get a little infotained with the absurdity of our national, state, and local politics and policy. Thank you. I really appreciate it, Lori and Suzanne. Definitely get this out to folks. Again, sorry about the audio at the beginning, but I'm glad we straightened it out, and I'm glad I was paying attention to the feed so that I noticed it. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night on the next